They called him a monster, a K9 too dangerous, too uncontrollable. They said no one could handle him. Trainers gave up, officers lost hope. But when a blind boy stepped forward, whispered just one word, and everything changed. What happened? Next shocked every officer in the room. This is a story you'll never forget. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The training field echoed with frustrated voices. Officers stood in a circle, watching the German shepherd thrash against his leash. His growls were deep, his eyes sharp with defiance. Every command shouted at him seemed useless, bouncing off the walls of his wild spirit. This wasn't an ordinary K9. He was powerful, intelligent, and fast, but his aggression made him dangerous. Trainers had tried everything: discipline, patience, even rewards, but nothing worked. The more they pushed, the harder he resisted. Rumors spread quickly through the department. Some said the dog was broken, unfit for service. Others whispered darker suggestions, saying he was a liability that needed to be removed before he hurt someone. His file, once filled with promise, was now stamped with one word: uncontrollable. Yet even as frustration mounted, there was something undeniable in his stance, a raw energy, a spark that hinted at greatness. He wasn't failing because he lacked potential. He was failing because no one truly understood him. Inside the precinct's meeting room, tension hung heavy in the air. The senior officers sat around a long table, files stacked high, frustration clear on their faces. At the center of every discussion was the same problem: the dog. He had been given chance after chance, but each session ended in chaos. Some argued it was time to cut their losses. "We can't keep risking our people," one officer said sharply, slamming his hand against the table. Another agreed, pointing out that no department could afford a K9 that refused to listen. Their voices carried the cold edge of finality. But then came a softer voice. Mark, one of the handlers who had worked closest with the shepherd. "He's not dangerous," Mark insisted, leaning forward. "He's misunderstood. There's something in him waiting to be unlocked. We just haven't found the key." The room fell silent for a moment. Everyone knew this was the last debate, the final decision. Either the dog would be retired permanently or granted one last chance. The day of the demonstration arrived, a chance for the public to see the department's K9 unit in action. Families filled the training hall, children pointing excitedly at the dogs lined up with their handlers. Among them was a small boy, his dark glasses hiding eyes that could no longer see. He walked carefully, guided by his mother's hand, his white cane tapping softly against the floor. Despite his blindness, there was a quiet confidence in the way he carried himself, as if he had learned to sense the world differently. The officers noticed him, their voices lowering out of respect. The boy stopped suddenly. Though he couldn't see, he tilted his head, listening. His attention seemed drawn not to the obedient dogs performing tricks, but to the restless shepherd pacing at the far end of the hall. Whispers spread among the crowd. Why was he staring in that direction? What could he possibly sense? The officers exchanged uneasy glances. None of them expected that this boy, frail, blind, and silent, would be the one to change everything. The restless shepherd tugged sharply at his leash, his body tense, ears pricked forward. Every officer braced themselves, ready to pull him back if he lunged. He had never tolerated strangers before. Yet the blind boy, small and fragile, began walking slowly toward him, his cane tapping lightly with each step. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Stop him," one officer whispered urgently. But the boy didn't falter. His mother reached out as if to hold him back, only to pause when she saw the calm determination on her son's face. He wasn't afraid. He seemed drawn, as though something unseen was guiding him forward. The dog's growl rumbled low, vibrating through the leash. But then, something shifted. The shepherd's ears twitched, his stance softened. Instead of lunging, he stilled, his dark eyes fixed on the boy. The boy extended his hand slowly into the silence. Against every expectation, the uncontrollable dog lowered his head ever so slightly, acknowledging the gesture. For the first time, the room fell silent, not from fear, but from awe. The room held its breath as the boy knelt down, his small hand still extended. The shepherd's eyes, once blazing with defiance, now flickered with something different, curiosity. Mark, watching closely, had never seen the dog so still in the presence of a stranger. It was as if the animal was waiting. The boy leaned closer, his lips barely moving. No one around him could hear the word he whispered, but the effect was instant. The shepherd's ears perked, his tail twitched, and his tense body seemed to relax. The growl that had rumbled so fiercely in his chest faded into silence. Gasps echoed from the officers as the uncontrollable dog slowly sat down, his gaze locked onto the boy as though he recognized him. Then, in a move that stunned everyone, the shepherd nudged forward, pressing his nose gently against the boy's hand. The blind boy smiled faintly, as though he had known all along. "See? He's not angry," he murmured softly. He was just waiting for someone to listen. The room erupted with stunned whispers. Officers who had spent months battling the dog's defiance could only stare. The shepherd, once a snarling menace, now sat calmly at the boy's side. His ears relaxed, his breathing steady. It was as though the whispered word had unlocked a hidden switch inside him. Mark blinked in disbelief. He had shouted commands, pleaded, and disciplined this dog endlessly, but not once had he seen him so obedient. This isn't possible," one officer muttered, rubbing his eyes as if the sight couldn't be real. The boy reached out again, and the shepherd leaned in, licking his hand gently. The tension that had always clung to the animal was gone, replaced by quiet loyalty. It wasn't fear. It wasn't submission. It was trust, something none of the trainers had been able to earn. Mark's throat tightened. In that single moment, he realized the truth. The boy had connected to the dog in a way no one else ever could. The officers weren't content to stand idle. They needed proof that this wasn't a fluke. Mark gave a hesitant nod, signaling for a simple test. One of the trainers tossed a small object across the field, a task the dog had always ignored before. This time, the shepherd bolted forward with precision, retrieved it, and trotted back, dropping it neatly at the boy's feet. Gasps filled the room. It was the first successful retrieval he had ever completed. Encouraged, Mark tried again. "Sit," he commanded, his voice steady. To his amazement, the dog obeyed instantly, lowering himself with perfect posture, his eyes never leaving the blind boy's calm face. The trainers exchanged bewildered looks. The animal who had resisted every command was now performing flawlessly. The secret wasn't force or fear, it was connection. The crowd, once skeptical, broke into soft applause. Even the senior officers couldn't hide their astonishment. The uncontrollable dog had just proven his worth in the most undeniable way. From that day forward, the dog was no longer labeled uncontrollable. He earned back his place in the K9 unit, but with one important difference. He was no longer just a tool for the department. He was a symbol of second chances, living proof that sometimes strength is found in the most unexpected bonds. The blind boy continued visiting, his presence grounding the shepherd in ways no officer ever could. Together, they became inseparable. During training sessions, the boy guiding with calm assurance while the dog responded with unwavering loyalty. It was as if the two shared a language only they could understand.